Bluffs Savings Bank, you still get personalized customer service.
We have identity-safe checking with LifeLock, identity theft protection.
You get personal mortgage lending to fit your needs now and in the future.
You get business banking with the latest technology because saving you time saves you money.
At Council Bluffs Savings Bank, you get people who answer when you call and local employees who are actively involved in our community. Council Bluffs Savings Bank, hometown banking the way it used to be.
We're going to get started. Mark?
Not enough memory. What? You know, I think this thing...
First on the study session agenda is CVB Executive Director Budget Report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate this time on your study session agenda. I'm going to try to keep this as concise as possible, but I do want to acknowledge a few things here that have occurred over the last 2 years. You've done so much work that I think at least me, and you think the least of people to acknowledge it is somebody who hasn't been here, but I do realize that you put in a lot of hard work. You made some tough decisions. Some very important things regarding the Bureau have occurred over the last 2 years. And as I've had a chance to meet with you, Mr. Mayor, and the council members, appreciate that time over the last 8 weeks. Believe it or not, that's how long I've been in my position already. Time flies when you're having fun and you're very, very busy. But there's been a lot of things focused on, and particularly the first 3 weeks, my board looked at the budget and had to come up with some decisions very quickly. And speaking of that board, I do want to acknowledge that we do have some CVB board members here. We have Brian Biederman, Cindy Thompson, and Corey Nelson, along with staff member Josie Beyer. So we've been busy over the last, like I say, 8 weeks. I do want to acknowledge a few things, and then I also want to hand out a 7-community comparison to give you a sense of where the CVB fits into other communities, and then talk about the proposed budget numbers. Since you all chimed in and said it would be a good idea for the CVB to be separated from the chamber, a great deal has occurred. 501c6 was formed to be able to incorporate the Bureau along with a strategic plan that was outlined with the help of Bill Geist from Zeitgeist Consulting of Madison, Wisconsin, along with the fact that an executive director search took place, hiring search-wide out of Minnesota to be able to come up with the appropriate candidates. Obviously, I'm very happy with the outcome of that. But as one person asked, it probably didn't take a search firm to find a guy from Ottumwa, Iowa, but that doesn't really acknowledge the fact of all the candidates that were screened out that probably weren't your ideal executive director. And from talking to the board, they had 3 choices that they could have chosen from in terms of an executive director, and fortunately I was the one that they hired. I feel very happy to be here in Council Bluffs. But there's a lot of momentum that's occurred over those 2 years, and I think the budgeting time is probably not a time to interrupt that momentum. A great deal has occurred, and I'm going to ask Josie to hand out a 7-community comparison for you all to take a look at. It compares Council Bluffs to not the biggest communities in Iowa, not the smallest communities in Iowa, but really the mid-range where Council Bluffs fits in. Those communities include Ames, Burlington, Cedar Falls, Dubuque, Iowa City area, and Waterloo. You're not going to see Des Moines and Cedar Rapids because looking at those numbers that, their population, their budget really doesn't provide any insight in what they do in terms of a bureau. Likewise, the communities of Boone and Fairfield probably don't offer a lot of insight on the bottom side of things. But these communities have some raw numbers that I think are worth looking at, including population, budget, number of hotel rooms, staff, and percentage of hotel-motel tax invested in Bureau activities. And the most relevant information is towards the bottom half, where you see the rankings in each one of those categories. Under population, as you might surmise from the communities I've listed, Council Bluffs is in that mid-range. In terms of budget, you might be a little surprised, though, that Council Bluffs hover towards the bottom range. Obviously larger than Cedar Falls and Burlington, but smaller than those communities it's closest to in population. In terms of hotel rooms, Council Bluffs has nearly 2,300 hotel rooms to generate bed tax. That's near the top. Only Iowa City is higher in terms of number of hotel rooms, and certainly outpaces Dubuque, Waterloo, and Ames. In terms of staff, we're tied with Burlington in terms of number of full-time equivalent positions, which again is towards the bottom. And then, of course, percentage of hotel motel tax invested into our efforts is dead last. We own that position on our own at 20% of hotel motel tax collected. That's below Iowa City at 25%, and then you've got a slew of communities that are right at either exactly at or about 50%. This is relevant just because that speaks to our capacity and what we could do. And what we need to push up against includes these communities, our competitive set, but also what's across the river. And Omaha is not listed here, but the numbers that I've been able to research and find out is that the Omaha CVB has a budget of $5.3 million. So more than 10 times the budget that we currently have. And not that we're working always at odds with them, we have to be able to push out our own message when it comes to touting the benefits, the assets of Council Bluffs. One other thing I'd like to point out, and it's inside your second page, is the column by Breaking Brad. I can never quite get that right. I always want to call it Breaking Bad, and probably because it's bad news for Council Bluffs. For those of you who can't read it, I can go ahead and briefly give you the quote here. In his column from January 21st, the new head of the Council Bluffs Convention and Visitors Bureau said the city has potential as a tourist destination. Sure, right now thousands of people pour into town annually hoping to catch a glimpse of, quote, Teen Mom. Somebody had to explain who Teen Mom was to me, and when it was explained to me, I realized, of course, this is clearly not a good mention in his column, but it illustrates some of what we have to push back against, and I think the Convention and Visitors Bureau can be a part of pushing back against those stereotypes where people want to pigeonhole Council Bluffs. And we have a lot to promote in terms of our quality of life. I will not go back on anything I said about we've got great potential. I just don't think that he sees it through the right lens. So talking about budget numbers, then let's talk those figures. And when you get past the copy there, touting Breaking Brad's column, you're going to see a couple of columns. One is FY 2015 and the other is FY 2016. And it seems most relevant to be looking at those two numbers because, of course, you want to know where we're at right now in this current fiscal year. Then you also want to see where we're proposing. I mean, we are clearly dreaming big in terms of what we can do, but I think dreaming big, but dreaming realistically. I think that in terms of administrative, we actually see a little bit of a downtick there in terms of that amount. Digital, web, and images, obviously there's a significant increase there, but that's exactly where our strategic plan told us that we needed to do more in. Obviously, people are relying upon their electronic devices to get that information, and so spending more money on our website to create a responsive design version of that is important, along with a mobile app, and then better taking advantage of the Iowa Co-op in terms of they, as a state tourism office, are buying down opportunities, and so what we end up paying, we're getting a discounted rate for. Along with that, we're also hoping to get bigger events at the MAC, and that's where that C-Vent lead generation line item. It's a hefty amount, but we're trying to get more events at the MAC, and this is our way of doing that, not unlike what the Omaha CVB is doing with that very same service provider. Brand building and business development, you can see that we're all in terms of the city's image campaign that's about to launch in terms of an effort of getting a group of people together to spend a considerable amount of time and seeing how we can redefine Council Bluffs in terms of its image. Likewise, we also want to ante up because the Lust Fest is a very important way of illustrating what we have to offer on the riverfront. And so we've got an allocated amount as a sponsorship for that. There's a kiosk there listed for the MAC. This is an electronic version of getting information, so when we do have visitors at the MAC, we are getting them to go out to other attractions, restaurants, hotel accommodations, as well as a number of other amenities here in the community, and not expecting them just to stop on their own. Let's provide them the information in an electronic format. We're also promoting collaboration through attraction and hotelier meetings as a part of that particular area. Trade shows, you're going to see a slight decline there, and that's because we have really honed down very well in terms of identifying the best trade shows. Travel, lodging, meals, while there's a significant increase there, part of that is just naturally getting a better handle and grouping these expenses underneath this heading. We also are seeing some additional activity in terms of some shows that we're going to, that naturally we have to show that we're going to be spending some money going to the MPI World Conference, for instance, as well as the Destination Marketing Association International Annual Convention. Promotional materials, naturally we need things to disseminate at trade shows. Our memberships, again, we're showing those underneath this appropriate category along with joining the Destination Marketing Association International, which by the way is going to offer us a way of getting certified as a CVB that follows best practices. And given where we've come from, I think that's a very important thing for us to do. Print ads and publications, again, this is another way of getting the word out. The Council Bluffs CVB Visitors Guide shows here that we had allocated $11,000. Because we did have to go to reprint on that, we spent significantly more as far as an actual expense. So that's a difference there that's a little bit wider than it actually will be at the end of the fiscal year. We are also advocating getting out in print publications because for all the things that we do electronically, we have to have that print component complemented. In addition to that, we have incentives for events, which is not unlike what we've done before. We do have to provide sponsorships, pay for bid fees, those types of things in order to book things either at our athletic fields or the MAC. And then brochure distribution, I think, speaks for itself. We have our guides anywhere in hotels from Sioux Falls, or I should say Sioux City, down to Kansas City, from Lincoln to Des Moines, as well as in the metro, to make sure people know about the attractions that we have here, as well as the accommodations. Specialized software, we need a way of tracking our client contact. That's a part of that. And then under training, again, we're clustering those expenses underneath that category as they should be. DMAI, which I've already mentioned, is a large part of that $5,250 expense. Last but not least, I know that the mayor and council member head are a part of or have served on the Sports Authority Board. And this is the line item here where we leverage $50,000 from $50,000 from the state through a grant, as well as match that in order to, again, pay for bid fees, provide incentives. For instance, the gymnastics event that was at the MAC this past weekend has been a Nebraska event. We provided them the necessary incentive to book the MAC instead of being in Omaha. Likewise, the Nebraska USA wrestling event that's going to take place has been lured over here. We need to be players. We have to step up and have the appropriate then budget line item to do that. That brings us to $748,096 as opposed to $504,740. That sounds like a significant increase, and it is. But to take you back to that cover sheet, to show you where we change in terms of how we rank with our competitive set, under budget, we move one whole place. We surpassed Waterloo with a $610,000 budget to be in fourth place in that competitive set. Likewise, on the bottom, under percent of hotel motel tax, we move again one whole place. We leapfrog Iowa City at 25%, and we're still behind that central group at 50%. Obviously, we could have come in here and been even more aggressive and said, hey, we should be at 50%. That's where most of our competitive set is, but that didn't sound reasonable. And I think we need to take steps, and what I'm suggesting for you, and I know that you may have quite a few questions, but this is a next natural step for us to consider and see if we can't become more competitive. At this point, I'd just like to say thank you for your time, and I certainly welcome any questions that you might have.
Thanks, Mark. Any questions for Mark?
I just have one question. On the CB Visitor Guide, in prior years, ads were sold in that, so there was some income from that. Is the $57,000 the balance after ad sales, or how are you doing that?
We went away from ad sales after the separation from the chamber. But having put out publications for the State Tourism Office, I think we can sell positions in the future that won't compromise the content and make it more ad heavy than copy heavy. I think that's where we saw like the balance was being unnecessarily ad focused as opposed to content focused. But we could certainly sell the inside cover, inside back cover, and other positions and still be able to raise some dollars to help offset that cost.
Can you explain the need and the return on investment of more than doubling your membership fees? And some of these conferences may or may not be new, but if you look at the DMAI and various related things, it represents a significant part of the increase. What's the justification and the expected return on investment?
That's a very good question. Under memberships, what I found, and I'll apologize if we didn't catch everything exactly the way it was done in prior years, and we're just trying to bring it together in the most logical way. I think some of those memberships were realized as expenses under the trade show category. And so looking at those and thinking, we need to be as transparent and as accountable as possible. And I haven't said it already, but those two things are going to be the bywords that I live by. DMAI is an international association, as the name defines it as, and so the cost there of joining is significant. But I think we need to become an accredited CVB underneath its bylaws and policies and procedures to show that we are following best practices. The return on investment is probably going to be very difficult for me to find in hard terms, but I think that integrity and accountability are hard to put a dollar sign next to. I think we need to really be willing to step up and pay that cost to say that we are following best practices. And what was the other one? Councilmember Brannigan.
NPI World.
That one, and I'm probably not going to have the exact figure, but we did receive a grant to be able to attend that particular conference. It's going to be an opportunity for us to see whether that is going to be worth our while. The Iowa Tourism Office provides grants for these kind of events where you have a smaller bureau not necessarily able to attend, like a Des Moines or a Cedar Rapids or an Omaha for that matter. And the grant amount escapes me off the top of my head, but I know that we are going to defer some of that, or defray, I should say, some of that cost from what you're seeing there.
So will there be an updated budget if you're referencing all sorts of grants, but we don't really see them reflected in the numbers? So the true cost is not what's before us because there's grants. Am I misunderstanding that?
No, you're not misunderstanding that. In presenting the budget, we wanted to make it as clean and as straightforward as possible. And if I didn't do it according to how the council wants it done, I apologize. We'll certainly make sure that it's full and showing all revenue. I was wanting to keep it very clean. These are the hotel motel tax dollar expenses. We're requesting dollars for this, but you're right, we are getting some grant dollars that are going to defray some of those.
And then my final question, this accreditation process, are we the only one on this list? This seems to be the list that you're focusing on. Are we the only one of these CVBs that is not accredited?
We are going to be at the forefront of this. For instance, the Des Moines Bureau, the Quad Cities Bureau are. I believe the Waterloo is. The other ones I can't speak to definitively. But given what we have gone through in terms of your dissatisfaction with how the Bureau was being operated, I thought this was a good investment of us becoming certified, making sure that you have full confidence in us, following best practices when it comes to operations of the Bureau.
Thank you.
Other questions?
So just along the same lines, given the fees, the membership, the hotel motel tax, what's your overall assessment of the competitiveness of the proposed Council Bluffs program with what is currently the practice over in Omaha?
Well, we are, I did take the opportunity to talk with Dana Markle, and we had a lunch arranged. Unfortunately, she was ill. It was 2 weeks ago this coming Wednesday. So I haven't had a chance to really talk very much with her, but her director of marketing, Deb Ward, was available for a few minutes, and I talked with her a little bit about it. Without a doubt, you know, when their budget is 10 times larger than ours, it's difficult to get traction. We're going to find ways to work with them where it benefits Council Bluffs. But I've also reached out to the Sarpy County Tourism Director, Linda Revis, and we're looking at ways of working with them. There's some things that are much more similar between Council Bluffs and Sarpy County than there is Omaha. And if there's some ways of us working together, we're not saying this to the detriment of Omaha by any means, but if we have more things in common, you know, we talked about bidding for our respective state tourism conferences, and in 3 years, having them come back, you know, Iowa coming back to Council Bluffs, Nebraska coming to Sarpy County, and having an opportunity where those two conferences come together and showing that, you know, let's work together. Let's have something that's really going to spur a lot of people on the Iowa side to come to Council Bluffs and the Nebraska side to come to Sarpy County, and find that new way forward of working together.
I guess as we move forward on this, I just want to make sure that we're thinking about our competitiveness with Omaha in terms of not doing something that would inadvertently incentivize someone to have their activities or book their rooms across the river. That's where I'm coming from on this. So.
Sure. Part of what influences some decision making, not all, is the fact that we operate in an environment where the hotel motel tax is cheaper here by 6 percentage points. Okay. And so we are a little bit competitive from the get-go. We just have to tell our story a little bit more effectively and make sure that others know that, and then know the other reasons that are great reasons to come here. You know, the MAC is much more accessible in my mind than some other meeting venues in Omaha. We just need to tout that and other aspects of the community.
Well, I think that's the key. It's the message and how the message is relayed. And I know that we do try to promote the fact that there's free parking at the MAC versus paid parking down at the Quest. I'm not really concerned. You mentioned a couple times that Omaha's budget is 10 times the size of Council Bluffs. Their population is also 10 times the size of Council Bluffs, so that doesn't bother me. I'm more concerned about the message, continuity of message, positivity of message, and clarity. So, and I know you guys are working on that.
Yeah, well, and I've done some digging too, and I'd like to compare numbers with you. The difference in terms of population is 7 times. They're 7 times bigger than we are. And if our budget was up to $750,000, you take that by 7, then we would be on even par in terms of being proportional. But our competitor's not always going to be Omaha, and many times it's going to be these smaller communities. And so there's a whole lot of different aspects of going toe-to-toe with communities that we have to take into account.
Other questions? Anything else, Mark?
That's all I have.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
All right, Airport Authority. Any questions on the bond issue? The kind of the premise of the bond issue is that it's a small enough issue that the issuance cost would make it cost prohibitive for them to refinance. We've got money in the bank that's not earning us much interest, and all that interest expense comes out of the same taxpayers' pockets. And so this is something that Art talked about and the council talked about earlier, that we could take some of our reserves money and make the Airport Authority a loan, take their 4.55% interest rate, and what was the number, Dick?
0.61%.
0.61%. Any questions regarding that, or Andy's here if you had questions for Andy?
And the cost of doing that, really, there's no cost to us, it's only the savings, the 23,000 and some change, right? The cost was their cost, correct? So we're saving them their,
Cost to the city, yeah.
sorry?
No cost to the city.
That's what I'm, yeah.
Okay.
But it's savings. Because we're just using our money.
Yeah,
Yeah,
for the same tax base by
yeah,
lowering that
I got
interest
it.
rate.
I think it's great.
It's fantastic, thinking outside the box.
Yeah,
And
more financial creativity. We've seen a lot of that, so that's good.
Wait till you see the budget.
oh my.
Don't ruin it for us.
All right, I guess we don't have any questions, Andy. How about review the agenda? Anything in regards to the consent agenda?
With regard to the minutes from the last meeting, at the end, I clarified my intent on a vote on ordinance 6224.
Which was to move it to fourth.
Which,
Is that
that's
right?
what I understood
Yeah,
that the
yeah,
vote
yeah,
was.
yeah. That's how you clarified.
Yeah. So,
Anything else on the consent agenda?
Yeah, I have a couple of things. Don, on the rezoning request for Camping World, they'd made an original request that it looks like the Planning Commission said no to, but then agreed to a different change in the zoning to commercial. Is that correct? And I just wanted to make sure that the owners were then on board with that zoning designation.
I don't think it's went to the Planning Commission. Well, sorry. Yes, it has. Sorry. I was reading
So
something.
the Planning Commission recommended denial on the I-1 light
Yeah.
industrial and then approved to rezone to C2.
Yes.
And the Camping World applicant is okay with that?
They're
zoning?
okay as long as, well, let me explain. Their current facility is zoned I-1. The property to the north is zoned I-1. It's light industrial zoning. That is a zoning that permits the sales of equipment. The sale of equipment and RVs can be argued, the sale of RVs can also be argued that it is permissible in a C2 district. Staff has recommended to the Planning Commission that we seek C2 as opposed to I-1. The caveat is that they also have to get a conditional use permit in the C2 district, which we would run concurrent with this. So we're not extending their time period, and in our understanding, they're okay with that as long as they can do what they want. Ultimately, what we need to do is probably look at rezoning their facility and giving them a conditional use permit for that. The primary concern we have is not that Camping World's a bad use here. It is. It's a good use. Very good use. It's got access to the interstate. The challenge with the site is it doesn't have the accessibility you need for retail and some of the automotive type stuff. So that's why I think it's good. The real concern we have is what happens, in 20 years when that's not there. I mean, is this where we want to see an industrial facility? A long answer.
There's a little bit of discrepancy for me. I wasn't gonna bring this up till 7A, but they're related, that they asked for the I-1, and the write-up the text talked about I-1,
Yes. including
the recommendation, the denial, et cetera, but the agenda, maybe this is for you, Marcy, the agenda talks about C. So I'm confused. That caused me to be confused. Is it, they're asking for C, they're asking for I, they're saying no, but then the agenda says C?
Their application is an I2 classification. We are giving you a recommendation to do it as C2, and we intend to run it as a conditional use permit, which gets them to the same place they want to be.
Okay.
It's my understanding that that is acceptable to them, but that's probably best coming from them.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Other consent agenda?
On 3H, we have quite a few bond things today, and on one of the other ones later on in the agenda, I think it's Resolution 8A, with regard to 9.8 million. It references a specific year of the CIP, 2015-16, and I didn't see it on this one, and I wondered if I could know a little bit more about.
3H
Yeah.
is in the process of bond counsel writing the, I'll give you the preliminary official statement.
Okay.
It is to refinance, I believe 2007. I was gonna say 1978. 2007 issuances that would be comparable to the ones we're refinancing later on today. That document is not in our hands yet, but should be before the public hearing at the next meeting. So it has nothing to do with the $9.81 million bond issue. It will refinance and reduce the interest rate of other bonds that are callable.
Is that the one that basically probably will cut them in half if all goes?
For both of them, I think.
Okay.
There's, on today's 9.8 issue, there's 7.6 million in new CIP projects. There's $2,065,000 worth of refinance bonds that were 4.55%. And then the issuance cost brings that up to $9,810,000. But the 4 million is to set a public hearing for next council meeting where we will refinance an additional 4 million in bonds and reduce those interest rates if the council sees so.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, that answers my question as well.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. And like I say, we just got them the information on Friday. The statement should be coming out in a couple days that will clarify that, but they wanted to get it on. There's potential that after the State of the Union and the fact that the economy is really recovering, that interest rates may go up. They, just facetious, but potentially interest rates could move north, and so we're a little bit earlier than we normally are. The 9.8 million typically wouldn't have been done this early in the year. Art had Janae do that for two reasons. One, because he was concerned the interest rates may go upwards, and secondly, he wanted to have her do that while he was here to give her some counsel to do that. And so we did that earlier than we normally would do. But then in the process, bond counsel came back and said, we've got some other ones you can refinance and lower the interest rates on. How do you want to proceed? So
I think given the speculation about the future of the economy, I think that's wise calculus.
yeah.
Could we on 3E hear a little bit, Larry, from you with regard to the Mid-City Trail Project Phase 2? I got a lot of questions from folks who were interested. Is Larry here? Ah, there he is. It's the beard. See, I'm sorry. It throws its disguise. Some questions about it. People seemed very enthusiastic, but they just wanted a couple things, and I thought I'd give you a chance to briefly talk about it.
Mid-City Trail. The project has been around for a while. We, several years ago, were lucky enough to compete for some very significant federal funding, $760-some thousand, I think. What has been attractive in getting this outside funding has been the concept that's so strong, and that's the ability to tie the riverfront with downtown and to do it in a way that's safe, a way that sort of melds into the new view of the Broadway corridor, offering both bicyclists and walkers safe passage underneath the interstates at two locations. So what will people see when it's done? The trail will start at Playland, about where the trail ends now, coming through the park. We'll go underneath the interstate and what is really kind of the first true bike track, which is actually a separated bike and pedestrian track on one side of the road, comes out of the interstate, goes along the side of the road. Part of that's built up with a small retaining wall, goes back underneath the interstate going east, and stays on the First Avenue right-of-way to 35th. So all that is off-road, 12-foot wide. Some of it will have some lighting to it. And then at that location, it goes down to Second Avenue and proceeds combination on the road and then on the sidewalks, and that will be marked with signs and some indications of the trail on the street. And then and it veers up again onto First Avenue going through TJ. And at the east end of TJ, it goes again back down to Second, to 16th Street, and then goes up 16th and 16th to 13th on First Avenue. So it's about a mile and a half, mile and 3/4 of paved concrete trail. The rest of it is on road. There's landscaping, there's some bench nodes. When it's done, it will take us completely over to connect then with the trail on 13th, which goes north. So we'll have a connection going north there into Broadway Park. So that's generally what it is. We will also continue signage into the downtown, hopefully as part of this project.
So it seems to me I very much supportive of the idea of a major increase in the quality of life and connecting two of our existing significant investments of the trail along the river as well as the trail towards the center of town and then east and of course eventually north, and it's fantastic. Thank you.
Other questions for Larry? What is it? Other questions on the consent agenda? Questions on the public hearings?
On item 4D, saw the email from council back to Mr. Wade regarding various ways to respond to the petitions being submitted today. Had you formed a recommendation based upon what you've seen?
Not that I'm comfortable to be a final one at this point. Our bonding counsel is going to be in town tomorrow morning, and because of that, I think it might be prudent for us to go ahead and hold the public hearing tonight, but not take action on this particular resolution, but set up a special meeting later in the week if possible to address it, to give us an opportunity to sit down with bonding counsel and see what the options really are.
Okay.
I just think that's the prudent thing to do at this point.
I would tend to agree with that.
So just do the public hearing like normal, and at the end, then what's our language?
Essentially, not take any action on the resolution, but to propose that we have a special meeting set for whenever the council would get together this week and address it at that point.
But only for the bond, only for the $2 million bond
It's just on the
item, not the other ones.
Only 5D.
Okay.
The others can all move forward.
And go ahead and close public.
Yeah, I think you can go ahead and close public hearing at that point. Because the only issue at that point would just be what the law is.
Okay.
So do we need to pick a time today before tonight then, so we can?
Yep.
That's what.
Think about that. Anything else on the public hearings? Anything on the ordinance under fourth? Anything ordinance under first reading? Resolutions? Let's see.
On D, is Steve in here?
No, he's
Okay.
sent an email today. They've got two people sick on their council, and he needed to be at the meeting. He's gonna.
Okay, my only question was, nothing changed from the preliminary page that he
Not that
gave
I
us?
know of.
Okay.
I looked at it and they were the same.
There are some changes?
No, they
No.
are the same.
Oh, they are the same?
Yes,
Okay.
I can
Okay.
confirm that.
Yeah. They've just been halved from every 2 years.
Yeah, every
Okay,
2 years.
yeah.
Yep, you're quite right.
I was gonna confirm that on this, but this thing is, Marcy, this is broken again. It hates me.
Okay, I'll take a look at it. Yours is broken, my battery's
Anything else on the resolutions?
Yeah, I have some questions on H. Let me get there. still haven't gotten used to
Yeah,
it. Yeah, I've got a lot of questions on that one.
So here's what I know, and then Dick, you chime in, where necessary. Back many years ago, and I'm estimating 15 years ago, we tore down well, it was torn down long before that, I guess, but anyhow, we tore down the Wickambino building on that site. The city had title to it. Don Coates came to the city and he needed additional parking for 25 Main Place. Said if I pave the parking lot, can I use it for parking, and does he rent it for $1 a year?
No, it's, initially it was, first 10 years is pretty much in lieu of the rent, we just had the approval.
Okay.
And since that time, I think it's 800 and, what is it? I don't have that document, but it's,
So he rents it at a nominal?
yeah, it's supposed to be relatively close to fair market.
Yeah. And, but the 10-year deal where he paved it, the agreement was that we could have it back at any time. If we took it back immediately, we owed him 100% of the improvements. If we took it back after a year, we owed him 9/10 of the improvements, 2 years, 8/10, and so on and so on. Until after 10 years, there was nothing owed on it, and we could take it back. The owner of the old First National Bank building on the corner wants to do a development, and they want to apply for support funding, but they need to show that they have some control of the property. And so we've been in 3 or 4 months worth of discussions as to how to best do that. We don't want to turn the property over to them and have them simply run a parking lot there. Don't think that's fair to Don Coates, who's currently there, but if they are going to build a 4-story building on the site with commercial development on the first floor, mixed use, which is what they are proposing to do, we would like to see that happen. There are issues. It's in the floodplain, and they need to figure that out. They think they have. But again, it's a little bit of the chicken or the egg. They can't go to IFA for financing if they don't control the property, and they can't do their project without IFA funding. And so we tried to draw up a contract that would then commit them to doing something before we would transfer the property to them. I don't know if I've captured.
Pretty much. The next step is an option agreement on the actual land, and it's our intent to make it real tight as far as them actually having a solid project in place and something that can be financed before we let this property go. It doesn't make sense to do it if all they're gonna do is use it for a parking lot. And
Is it 100% back in our hands, though? I mean, we have,
Well, there is a tenant now that we can terminate the lease with.
on 90 days notice or something like
9 days' notice?
that. 90.
Oh, 90, okay,
Which would fit into any project.
sure.
So this authorizes you, though, to go ahead and set up an option with them, right?
No, this does not do that. That would come back here. The option comes back here.
So, all right, that helps. So we're just authorizing you to do this development agreement, or this memorandum of understanding that if all these things are met, then we would do this. But some of my questions are, unless I'm reading this wrong, is that as long as they do what they're supposed to, then we're gonna forgive the payments on the,
On the land.
but why would we do that? And my question is, because TS Bank paid like $252,000 for their lot, and we didn't forgive theirs, why would we be doing a forgivable on this?
This is their proposal. The land, I see the land as having a value of, I think, approximately $11 per square foot,
Based on the TS Bank.
That puts the value at $335,000 more or less. So yeah, it'd be a significant, and I guess the reason we do that would be the same reason we would rebate taxes to the project. If we think it's a good thing to have those apartment units in the downtown area, then this is the type of incentive these guys are asking for.
Okay, so my question then would be, because we've got so little information, what kind of apartments are we talking about? Are we talking about market rate apartments? Are we talking about some level of
Well, if they're talking
income
IFA,
restricted?
they would be,
What percentage of income then?
I don't know what the program is. 60, that's what I thought they were talking. 60% would be income qualified, which would be comparable to the 100 block project.
So what percentage of the IPA funding would that be in their total construction costs or their total project costs? In other words, what I'm concerned, are they going to be coming back for additional financing from the city at some point?
Yeah, because it,
This would be, because we're already talking here abating in the neighborhood of 100% of their taxes for 15 years, plus giving up our right to the land.
Yep.
We were not anticipating any additional assistance from the city for that, nor were they expecting.
Okay. So I guess, given the fact that, again, we have kind of a limited write-up here, and normally we have good calculation from community development as to what we think the costs are associated with this. Have those numbers been cut? I mean, do we have a ballpark? I realize that the deal has not been anywhere close to done at this point, but I guess I'm just kind of struggling to see what the price tag on this is going to be in the long term.
What their cost would be total?
Theirs, and then what that translates into what the city is giving up in.
Well, roughly they're asking for $3 million being rebated back to them.
Okay.
Oh, and I guess if we capture 100% of what I now project their value to be, and I came up with some gray numbers based upon discussions with the assessor's office. They came up with a valuation based upon some of the stuff they did on the 100 block of $60 a square foot. We applied that to the square footage here, and the assessors actually gave me some numbers that they thought would be ballpark for the minimum assessment agreement. That's just for that purpose and not for what you would actually tax them for once it's up and going.
Is this action just basically to get the conversation to continue rolling, and then all the meat of the agreement that will come before us?
It's been like pulling teeth to get this much detail, I guess, to be honest.
Well, that's not a good sign.
Well, no.
no, I'm uncomfortable with it in that normally when we get something like this, it's normally gone through the entire process. We have a recommendation from, a department head. We've got this and that and this.
And it was added on belatedly as well.
You have a detailed budget. You have a lot of things in place generally before you.
Right.
This is the type of thing, but this is the only way we felt comfortable in even talking about an option agreement, was get them to commit to something. And if the council's not comfortable with this, I really don't have a whole lot of problem with it.
And again, I just want to stress, there probably will never be anything developed on this ground if these people don't do it. It's in the floodplain, and so,
How are they getting, my question is, how are they getting around that?
well, I think they're talking, I don't know, they'd elevate the property. They've been in conversations with Steve. They'd have to get a map at Loma, map adjustment.
Yeah, a lot of work.
Yeah. As I understand it, though, the memo, it's, I think, similar to Lynn's question, I think it prefaces a continuing discussion. We're basically agreeing to keep talking and to perhaps agree to something in the future. We're not, if we pass this, we're not agreeing to selling it at a price, what it'll be.
This is essentially the city making a certain commitment to the project, and they making a certain commitment to the project.
But is the city's certain commitment, it doesn't include, at this time, with this action tonight, doesn't include money or agreement, it's just to start the conversation, to keep it going, correct?
Just to kind of get us in the ballpark. And you'll note, I did put some language towards the end here.
Yep.
In witness of the last unnumbered paragraph, in witness of the above understandings, and with the understanding that some of the proposed actions by the city will require approval through a legislative process of the city, we have fixed our signatures below. So you got a big hurdle right there. If the council doesn't set up doesn't agree to the right programs, the development agreement that would ultimately come out of this, they're not there.
But we're committed to the price, and we're committed to forgiving the note. That stuff we'd be committed to.
That would be part of the concept.
You have to charge them fair market value.
Mm-hmm.
And we arrived at that number based on the appraisal that was used for the TS Bank property. and felt comfortable that that would stand the sniff test. And then, but frankly, they said, you know, we don't want to pay that price for the property. And so they're asking for an economic development incentive. If they complete it within a certain time frame, we forgive the loan against it.
And this, what they're proposing to do then would renovate their building that they've got now, because,
No, what they're gonna renovate their building, yes, they've been in that.
and that's part of this. If they don't renovate that building, they're not getting any of this, because that building's
And then build a
work.
4-story facility where the parking lot is.
So there's, obviously, at this point, we don't have any proposed plans, any drawings, anything that would give us an idea of what we'd be looking at,
And I
or,
think they were looking for this to take the next step, to spend some more money.
They're saying if you're not interested, if you're not gonna do it, why are we gonna spend the money to do all that?
You know, I'm comfortable to continue the conversation at this point because it sounds like unless there's some concern over the basis, and I would think the TS Bank site just down the South Main would be comparable enough. And I take the mayor's point that I don't see anything else happening there because nothing has. And all those studies, or many of them that we have, talk about how we need commercial on the ground level and we need mixed use up there. And I'd like to continue the discussion with them, so I think it's a good idea. But I take your points entirely, and they'll have to answer those kind of things.
Yeah, I just don't know.
Yeah, no, I
feel comfortable that I know enough, when they say ground level, are they planning on doing like a pedestal with parking under, and then the first floor above that is?
Well, they're talking about commercial on the first floor, so.
But the first floor can be on top of a parking garage, that's why.
It could be, yeah.
Because a lot of times that's a suggestion on how to get around the floodplain. So that would make a difference to me, if that was the plan, then we're really not fulfilling what the studies have shown, and that's the egress from the street, retail. So I was just surprised. I just didn't know anything about this and didn't feel like there was a lot of.
Well, like I say, for 4 months, we've had meetings and walk away, and
Can we
then they say, where are we? And they say, where are you? And we say, no, where are you? And they say, no, where are you? And it's,
Well, I guess, given that there's been 4 months' worth of discussions, I'm just a little bit curious. I tried to do just an initial query as to Clarity Development, and couldn't find much hide nor hair of them. Are they an Iowa corporation? Do they do business in the area? Or?
Well, over in Omaha,
it's actually, the principal would be White Lotus Development.
Okay.
White Lotus is Arun Agarwal. He's currently doing a major development at the Mr. C's property that was on the front page of the business section of the World Herald. He was on the news 3 or 4 nights ago, and that he's doing the renovation of the Black History Building in Omaha.
Good, okay.
So he's an active developer in Omaha.
Good, I just wanted to make sure that, that this was somebody that was serious enough to be able to, get over these types of hurdles that we're talking about here.
He has substantial financial wherewithal.
So,
Very good.
So I have one more question then for clarity, because I thought that I was in the understanding that this just keeps the conversation going, but then I thought I just also heard that this action tonight commits us to forgiving the loan. So we actually are doing something financial. We're not just keeping the conversation going.
well, it contingent upon them doing a lot of things. We're making the commitment to move forward with that type of a transaction regarding the property, yes.
And subject to their financing.
If they're gonna be spending $20 million on those 2 parcels and building what they say they're gonna be building, then yeah, we have a commitment to move forward with the.
Do we have, to Sharon's point, do we have any, what is the extent of the control we have over design, or, for example, raising a very good point about street level access, the traditional downtown type?
Those types of details can be addressed in the development agreement as we move forward with that. Other than that, and zoning, we're at.
But Pat, so tonight really doesn't address that one way or the other, that'd be something.
And, I'd have no objection, and I don't know if they would either, if you wanted to defer action until they came to a study session and gave a presentation of what they plan on doing.
I know we can.
And maybe give you a little resume of what they have done.
That'd be better.
That would be helpful.
That'd be better.
nice.
Give-
Yeah.
I mean,
That would be very nice.
Yeah, because and the other question I had was that paragraph 6, it's really clear that they have to do what's in paragraph 5 above for that payment to be forgiven, but paragraph 5 above, all it really talks about is establishing a taxable valuation of 5.5 million. So I guess I would want that to say that it was contingent on them doing paragraphs 4 and 5 above.
I agree.
So are we going to table this until they come to the next,
I'm very comfortable with that.
do we table or postpone? What's appropriate?
Postpone would be what I'd recommend.
Postpone? Postpone to a date certain?
The next meeting, and we'll invite
Yes,
them. to
okay,
okay.
very good.
Yeah, that'd be helpful. So
It
we
would
had a
help.
lot.
Have an idea of what we're agreeing to.
Okay.
Other resolutions? John Finnegan's here, who we are hoping is our new Human Resources Director. John, can
Wonder who that guy was.
you,
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor
introduce
and
yourself
council
and
members.
tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, my name is John Finnegan. I grew up in Oakland, Iowa, and went to the University of Iowa and got my Bachelor of Business Administration there. And I've been working in human resources for over 20 years now. Industries from construction to telemarketing to media communications. So several different industries that I've been working in. And my wife and I live down in Glenwood now with our 4 kids. And I guess that's just a brief summary. Any questions that you guys have for me?
So will he be moving to Council Bluffs or?
No, he's not required now.
Okay.
Not in the immediate term, anyway.
Yeah, go ahead.
Mayor, you've had some good correspondence. We were discussing salary increases, and you were
Yeah.
thinking in terms of rethinking how we rate positions and make manning decisions based upon those sorts of things. Do you feel as though you've been wired into this and you're prepared to take on that sort of revamp of how the city?
Wendy's laughing because he's been wired.
Absolutely. And
That's good.
2 specific things that I would draw your attention to. I do have a senior professional in human resources certification, which is the certifying body through the Society of Human Resources Management, is the national organization for human resources. In addition, earlier in my career, I did also achieve a certified compensation professional certification, which would go directly toward that project.
Okay, well, I'm glad that you folks are way out ahead on that, and I welcome the mayor's comments and the work that's gone into this thus far, because that's a very positive step forward.
Thanks. Other questions? Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Anything on the applications for permits and cancellations?
I think I'll state the obvious. Can we vote on A6, A5 separately?
And do you want to give us some of your thoughts on it? That'd be helpful.
I thought you'd never ask.
Yeah, I'm sure it's shocking.
There was only 100 pages.
Hey, there's been worse.
And he came prepared.
Yes.
Did. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for the opportunity. Let's deal with 1 through 4 and then 6. I'm not aware of any issues with those, so unless you have questions about those, I'll deal with 5 specifically. There is some history here. There's a packet that was prepared and presented to Hounds that indicate there were 23 incidents where arrests were made in 2014 and 22 in 2014 and 23 in 2015, or 23rd this year. I'm actually torn by this because there's a sandwich of issues, some of them directly to employees that were problems and were arrested, and others where they're taking action to try and defer some of the problems that are there and working with us. The problem we face is that in doing more research, I actually had the comm center pull calls for service from January of 2012 through December 31st of 2014 for the 100 block. There were 400 calls for service of all types for the 100 block, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. 400 calls for service. 107 of those were to the address 162. That's Hounds' address. Now, the challenge we face is those are not all alcohol related. They're not all directly related to that resident or the business, but that's where the arrest occurred or the incident occurred. So it's concerning to me that over 1/4 of those calls in that 3-year time frame came from one location. Does that rise to the level of where we can say that the violations are sufficient to suspend the license or not approve it? My recommendation at this point is that there needs to be some more work done. We started working with Hounds and the folks on the 100 block back in September, shortly after I arrived. We've had meetings with them. We actually produced a graph, and I didn't bring enough copies for everyone to show them specifically what the issues were and who were the strongest owners of those issues, putting it kindly. The example I'll give you is Hounds had over 25 calls for service in a time frame from May through September, whereas the next closest one was 10 at Fiddle and Monkey. So I've talked to Deb this afternoon before the meeting started. She's interested in getting together again with Frank to talk about the issues that are there. But there needs to be a strong message sent, I think, to Hounds that they have to make some positive changes, otherwise it's not going to work.
And Chief, if I may speak to you directly, actually, I believe I'm the closest one to this, so I get to hear it many of the nights because I'm a half block away. It is a terrible situation. Many times it doesn't appear to rise to the level of an arrest, but there are a lot of folks who are having to listen to a lot of disturbances, and even myself, I can see a lot of them seem to come out of that place or associate with that place. And it's very concerning to me that there are a lot of people that won't go down in that area now, they tell me, because of that place. I myself won't walk on that side of the block at that time of day, after 8 or 9 p.m. because it's just not conducive to wanting people out. And so that deeply concerns me.
And those are the sentiments that I'm hearing from a lot of other people, including some of the businesses down there. They're concerned about that behavior. The problem I have right now is I can't stand here and tell you that I have enough evidence to go to the court or to ABD and say that, here are the violations. There are specific violations of staff being intoxicated. There's over-serving as recently as January of this year. So there is sufficient evidence to say we're not going to give you a license for right now. But part of my responsibility is to help businesses to succeed, provide the environment and help that. That means working together with them to do it. And we're willing to do that, but Hounds has to step up and do their part, in my mind.
Do you feel like there has been some cooperation? I know you guys started this a few months ago. It seems like we haven't heard as much and there hasn't been quite as much, but I don't know because I don't hear the day-to-day.
And the challenge we're facing right now, Melissa, and that's a great question, is that a result of the cold weather or the winter season and not having people outside, or is that proactive efforts on both parts? What you're going to see from us, and I can tell you what we're going to do, we're going to do proactive operations both publicly and not so publicly to make sure that all our liquor establishments are in compliance. This isn't just about Hounds, this is providing a safe environment for everybody in town. So everybody's held to the same standard. That means doing undercover operations when we need to. That means going in and checking licenses when we need to check occupancy with the fire department when we need to use all the tools that our resources are available to make sure that they're working. So that's our approach. Now, as far as Hounds goes, I think the reoccurring theme is there may not rise to a chargeable legal level, but there seems to be an issue with alcohol being served and how it's being served. But that's something that we can work with Hounds to help them identify. And we're happy to do that, but we need to see some effort on their part.
Just my limited experience, which was walking out of Dixie Quicks one night, is that their outdoor dining area isn't used for outdoor dining. I don't believe they were serving out there, but I think they had overserved customers who then migrated out there for a cigarette, and there were 20 or so customers that stood around socializing and making comments at people that passed by. And while I'm entertaining the Canadian consulate who's in town looking to establish economic development business with Canada, a fight breaks out over someone who walks by, and someone made a comment to his girlfriend, and the next thing there's cruisers, and I call 911 and try to intervene and turn around and look, and the Canadians are on their way back to Canada. So,
and that's consistent with the recurring theme is we can't say, excuse me, my cold's still bugging me. we can't say it's always coming directly from hounds, but when someone goes in there and they're already over, they need to work with us to make sure that they get taken care of and they're removed, because they're not serving outside. Deb Peterson mentioned they're not using that anymore, and that's great.
They do.
But it's gonna get warm and people are gonna congregate there to smoke. So if we don't self-police it, then we have to come in and take care of it.
Yes, and Dick, my question for you, and we've discussed this before, if we act not to renew, then what are our options then out of cycle if we have more violations that we feel we can establish and make a case on? What would be our options to take this on then out of cycle?
If we, at some point in the future, say after another incident or two, or we just prove up the most recent and get a conviction, the council at any time can go after the license to suspend, or it takes a lot to revoke a license in Iowa.
Yeah.
But as far as, one thing I had suggested, just informally, was if the applicant is agreeable, just go ahead and address the issues that we have in front of us for the past year and say, grant the license subject to a 2, 3, 4 day suspension. Where sometime in the next 30 days, he has to close down for 3 or 4 days.
And that's something we could do, that's an option.
Well, we'd have to have the consent of the landlord, because that really is not a way we, or not the landlord, I'm sorry. Too busy dealing on another issue, I guess. But the licensee would have to be agreeable to that, to be done that informally.
Otherwise, if there's 3 no's tonight, like we did in a previous bar liquor license, they just appeal to the state, they continue operating. I mean, really, nothing happens if this doesn't pass tonight. They continue business, but they have to go to Des Moines and appeal.
Well,
Is that correct?
Actually, you can have telephonic hearings are pretty much.
Oh, telephone, they don't even have to drive to Des Moines.
And you do
Okay.
have a history here, you've got 24 offenses here.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's not like you don't have any evidence that you'd be relying on.
And the other one, I would suggest that even though ultimately we did not prevail on that technical sense, did we not in another way by the fact that
Well, I think it sends a message.
seems like we have considerably fewer problems.
Right.
Yeah.
Rather than just saying yes. And I appreciate the concerns of all sides, but I also think a message should be sent. Particularly, it is affecting so many people and businesses. It's really being detrimental to the
We
whole
did,
area.
Yeah.
as Tim said, we pulled all the business owners in the 100 block together for a meeting.
Yeah.
And
Was Hounds there at that meeting too?
it was,
Okay.
and
That's
we're
when we
very
presented that
clear that we
information
weren't
about-
gonna put up with it. And things got better, and to that end,
That's why I was
within a
wondering.
few weeks, the owner took down the outdoor dining fence. He probably should have called Greg to do it. I don't think he took it down and threw it in his basement, but took down the fence, which was a positive action on his part.
Do we know that in reading each one of those incidents, it really appears like some of the employees might definitely be part of the problem? Has there been any attempt by the owner to make those changes that would change the behaviors that
I
are?
made it clear what I thought the issue was, which was the former manager of another institution, if that's the right word, that
Another problem
had
bar.
the same problem, under the same business plan, which is hip-hop nightclub.
Well, I guess what I would like to know is, does the state have any mandated training for employees when a bar has that many violations of over-serving and drinking while on duty? Do they have mandatory?
There is training available for employees of liquor establishments to take to either before a violation occurs, or they can take it in mitigation of a violation. In other words, if they haven't taken it before, they can take that now, and it'll wipe away one of the underage services or things like that. To go back to what Mr. Wade said, I'm inclined to agree with him. If we have the opportunity to work with the bar and say, we're going to hold your feet to the fire with this suspension for, voluntary suspension for so many days, and a commitment in that agreement that you will work with us to make sure these violations don't occur, and define how that looks. That is a better position to me than just saying, go away.
And
I would
Deb
agree.
is here, right? Are you here with Hounds or no? Can we ask them if,
do whatever you want. As
And-
Hanford always say, you can do whatever you want.
I mean, do you have any insight on this, if that's something that is even an option, or is that, I mean, is that okay to find out? Okay. I would be more inclined to do that than to just annex.
Well, and
Nor, though I don't want to wait 2 weeks to
be
know
a
the answer.
weekend though. I don't want it to be Sunday, Monday, Tuesday.
I agree.
Well,
It'd
and
be
that's
something
what
that's-
And I don't want to
Steve
wait
has
2 weeks to
done.
know the answer either.
Right.
And that's
I'm sure she'll have to give him a call right
Yes.
now, I would
We
think.
shall have some, probably, I mean, you've obviously discussed this.
Deborah Peterson, 215 South Main Street, Counts Bluffs. Actually, I don't have a whole lot to say because the agenda, once it came out Wednesday afternoon, had 5 or 6 violations listed on it. When I called the city attorney to obtain copies of those, as Dick can tell you, it took a couple days to get that done, and somebody was gone, somebody didn't approve it. But as we glanced through them, out of those 23 that are alleged to be at this property, over half of those don't show on their face that they came out of this property. There's a lot of issues, and you can't tell who was drinking where, what time, whatever. We are in the business of selling alcohol. We have requirements to, that we have to comply with. Did a girl serve after 2 a.m. last summer? Yes, she did. I believe, and Dick, you'll have to clarify this, I think she took a plea on that and did some community service or something and took care of that. The owner of the bar is very upset by all of this. And yes, I talked to the chief today, and I talked to Don at Dick's office about setting up a meeting, because these police reports come in, they say 100 block, 100 block, 100 block, 100 block. And, we have instituted a dress code. We have doormen at both entrances to the property. And if people are coming to the location and appear to be intoxicated, we're not letting them in. We are counting the number of people in. And I understand that one time we had people lined up to get in because we had the limit of people in there. And then the cops came by to ask, why do we have all these people on the sidewalk? Well, they're waiting to get in, because if 2 come out, we let 2 in. So yes, I think the owner is totally committed to working with you and figuring out what's what here and how these things happen. The recent incident, I want you to understand, the guy was arrested at another establishment, and the guy who's arrested for public intox says, I was drinking at Hounds. Okay, good evidence in my opinion, I don't know. But the bartender says that he was there. So there's a lot of issues and stories here, and I really don't want you to just rely on, a 100 block report. And yes, Nate, I'm sure you hear noise up there at your house and there's things, but is every one of them coming out of Hounds? I don't know.
It's actually within my line of sight, that bar.
Okay,
many
now,
of them do. I can't say everyone, but many
right,
do.
and there's issues there, and yes, we need to get it addressed before spring. And yes, we have taken down our outdoor dining area. There's no dining, there's no smoking, there's no whatever. But can we stop people from standing on the sidewalk in front of our bar? No, we can't. If that's what the council wants us to do, then we really need to sit down with the chief and figure out a better answer of how we're going to get people. With the no smoking in the bars issue, you got people standing on the sidewalk. Is it my fault at my office if people are in a fight on the sidewalk in front of my office? No. But these things happen. So I think, we've made the attempt to talk with the city attorney's office. I don't know what the bartender is doing about the charge. She has to appear in court tomorrow. I am not personally representing her. That's her own charge. She's been reprimanded for, any problems that have been there before. I don't know what happened. This guy apparently came in, we think he ordered a pitcher of beer and 2 shots and had another individual with him. Is that over serving? I don't know. It depends on, what his condition was or what she perceived his condition to be at that time. So Mr. Hoover, who owns the place and holds the license, is willing to do this. We were cited by the state for a number of offenses last year, which we had no knowledge of. We contacted the state. Those charges were not against this establishment. There was only the one for the after hours, and we paid our fine and did the stipulation on that, which the city attorney's office has copies of. So we've just had a chance from Thursday to start looking through the reports and figuring out what's what. Don Bauermeister said that he would set up a meeting with the chief, and I talked to the chief today too about that, and we're going to do that. We can't really agree. I don't have any authority to agree to any suspension, and I would encourage you not to do that. That really doesn't send the right message to your business owners, your taxpayers here. Yes, there are options to deny the license, and as a practical matter, if you'd vote against it, we will appeal that to the state and continue to operate. We do at this point want to be cooperative, but it needs to apply to everybody too.
Cause doesn't always equal correlation, and I understand that. I'm telling you that we never had these issues until the day he opened up hounds. And so it's pretty clear where the problem is. And so for Frank to say it's out in front and somebody else's problem, when the neighboring shoe store gets 2 windows smashed out that's right next door, that's not a good thing. When other businesses on the block get their windows broken out, including hounds, that's not a good thing. And frankly, I don't think they denied it when we met back in September. They need to get their act under control, and I told them if they didn't, we were going to enforce the law.
We understand that, and that's why we've adopted the dress code, hired the doorman, allowed only a certain number of people, whatever the fire code allows in there, and taken down the outdoor dining. I guess my question is, what else do you want us to do? If there's something you want us to do, that we need to know that, or if the chief has a suggestion, we need to sit down. We also, the other comment that was made was that we don't have a lot of police presence in the block. And I realize we don't have officers on duty that we can set up there and sit in the whole block all night, every Friday night and Saturday night. I understand that. But there used to be, according to the bar owners, there used to be a police presence a little bit more than it is now. And if that's driving by or sending an officer once an hour or once every 3 hours walking by, no, I don't, do we want to have police there all the time? I don't know. Does that inhibit? I don't know. They're sitting in the old market every Friday night, Saturday night. I don't know if that inhibits, but it certainly does tend to diminish the problems that are caused if you have officers patrolling. So I understand that you want to blame the Hounds establishment for the whole thing. We don't take the blame for everything. We understand there are problems, and we're trying to correct them. That's my position on behalf of the owner. I don't have any consent to, or any authority to consent to any shutdown, and I can pretty much guess that the answer would be we're not willing to do that. We're willing to try to work with the police department, the city attorney's office, whatever, to alleviate problems to the extent that we can alleviate them, that we have caused them.
And I guess the hardest thing you said, because it's the weather's changed, is a curiosity of, like I said, how it's changed from you did have that initial meeting to now, but there's really no way to, is there any real way to tell have we noticed a difference in improvement? I don't know, sorry, that's my.
We've had calls again as recently as the 19th.
Yeah.
It's the best eyewitnesses at the table, so.
Well, that was prior to the meeting. Oh, well,
Folks coming out, and I don't know, I'm not strictly speaking witness because I didn't see the whole, the beginning of things, but folks coming out quite loud, quite vulgar, and quite assaultive, really. I mean, just it seems there's a culture there that needs to change.
I guess one option tonight would be for the council just to postpone action on this until we've had a chance for the meeting to occur, and you have a report back from both sides at the next meeting. That essentially keeps the license in place because of the application for the license was applied in a timely fashion. So they continue to operate essentially under the old license.
And I've already responded to Don with some times and dates this next week that would work out well, so we could sit down and work on that plan. I know there's been some affirmative steps taken, and I hope that the changes of weather will help that. But as the mayor indicated, this Hounds has to take that step further. We can't continue. We can't go into spring with that same atmosphere that was there last fall.
I agree.
It's not going to work.
I fully agree. I like the idea of you guys meeting first before we make a final decision, but that's just me.
I don't really have an issue with that as long, I don't know, I'm not up on the date stick.
To the 9th of February.
But are we good with our license then?
Continue to operate because you filed your application timely.
Okay.
So you're good.
I don't see any problem with that. If you, and I don't plan to attend tonight unless you need me or Mr. Hoover to come back here. But if Chief has already provided dates, I'm sure they're headed to my office, and we'll get that arranged when I get back tomorrow.
That's just, it's like everybody else, obviously, but
Sure.
that's what I would like to do.
And one of the things, I don't want to say where they are, but there certainly is a sufficient police presence in the area. Probably many of us can say that. I don't want to say where I've seen them, but it seems like whenever there is a significant problem, I have never seen a delayed response time. I've seen very professional, very quick. So, and I know you're not implying to the
No.
contrary. I don't want to imply that you are.
No.
But
But yeah, I agree. Especially on the weekends, I think I've noticed there's always been at least one, if not two cars down there, which I think is helpful lately. I mean, I think you just, that people walk out and see that and hopefully are acting slightly better because of it.
I would be
And
willing to.
again, and I'm in this business for almost 10 years, and so I speak from knowledge, I guess. I don't think it's fair to the rest of the citizens to have us have a police officer watch one operator who can't control his business. And he knows he can't control it. We've told him he can't control it, and he continues to operate because he's making money. And it's just wrong. And please pass that on to him. That I don't think it's right. You don't need to pass it on because I've told him myself. But you know, in the long run, he's not going to make money because his dram shop's going to go up and he's going to get sued, and it's just not a business plan that works.
I'm fine with postponing it, but what I would say is that whatever develops from that meeting, if we head into spring and summer and we don't see a change after that, meeting has set everything out as to what needs to happen, what I want to know is then can we, and this was brought up, mid-cycle, say, you know what, we're just going to have to go to the state and ask them to suspend because it's just not getting better.
But what we do, take an action either to suspend or essentially the suspension. And then we would forward that onto the state.
Okay.
And that's how.
All right.
Is that the same? Is there a higher burden, or is it?
No, in fact, I prefer that process as opposed to now where maybe we don't have the case really built yet, trying to take an action on the license. I'd much rather wait until we actually have an instant proved up that would just.
Because then we have a better chance of actually prevailing too, correct?
Exactly.
That's why for now,
So often now, your penalty is to not grant the license, which is a revocation, or the equivalent of revocation, which is very extreme in Iowa.
And they're not going to do it. And,
right.
But if there's something taking place there and you hand down a 3, 4, 5 day suspension, that's something I think the board in Ankeny would look at more seriously.
Well,
possibly uphold.
Speaking for myself, I'm very inclined to see a plan of action and some, I guess, a move of good faith of some discussion of some time. I really think there ought to be. I appreciate not all the incidents on the block are from there, but a fair amount. I think it's fair to say that do, and so I think there ought to be some. There ought to be something from that, and then to the extent we can move forward and things are better, obviously that's what we all want. But at the same time, I can't just pretend that didn't happen. That's got to inform the plan, and so I personally am inclined to great deference to what the chief and his officers are able to come up with. But I would like to see something not only forward, but I really think there ought to be something. I hadn't thought of that idea, and I think there's significant merit to that.
Well, I also appreciate your observation, Chief, that that perhaps additional work needs to be done when it comes to the reporting and documentation and oversight, investigation, whatnot. And I appreciate the fact that you have turned that up several notches since your arrival here on scene, and I appreciate your hard work in that regard. And that's what it's going to take to make the case, and that's something that perhaps we were lacking in the previous case that now we can a little bit more effectively bring to bear as we move forward in this case. So, thanks for your efforts, Chief.
Yeah. We definitely don't want one establishment to ruin. I mean, that is a nice area. Everybody has spent a lot of money and effort on making a nice area. We don't want it to get a reputation out that don't go some people will not walk the end of the block right now. We definitely
they really won't.
I
won't.
We don't walk down there. And I would say this, is that I am always very hesitant. In fact, I have not voted in favor of not renewing a liquor license since I've been on the council, because I always hesitate to do something that impacts somebody's ability to make a living. It's their livelihood. But I would say this is the most evidence I've been brought since I've been on the council that would lead me to go that direction. So as much as I hesitate to ever want to affect somebody's ability to make a living, this one is substantial compared to anything I've ever been brought as far as the number of cases.
Well, and unfortunately, this environment inhibits other people's ability to earn. a
You're
living.
right.
Correct.
You're
But
right.
You've heard it from people that
Correct.
Correct.
go to the 100 block, that they won't go to that end of the block.
Right.
And there are other businesses on that end of the block who suffer because of that.
That's my concern at this point.
Yes.
That it is impacting, especially the couple that are trying very hard to do the right thing, that, yeah.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Any questions?
Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Dave.
Thank you, both.
Anything else? See you at 7.
We don't have, I thought we had executive session.
At Council Plus Savings Bank, you still get personalized customer service.
We have identity safe checking with LifeLock, identity theft protection.
You get personal mortgage lending to fit your needs now and in the future.
You get business banking with the latest technology because saving you time saves you money.
At Council of Savings Bank, you get people who answer when you call and local employees who are actively involved in our community. Council Bluffs Savings Bank, hometown banking the way it used to be.